SITA test procedures, be it SITA standard or SITA faster, is a little bit, faster than your full thresholds. So how does it improve the speed is the question. It improves the speed by doing three things. One, by using this Bayesian based approach. Number one, which is just I explained to you. Number two, by not using the catch trials for the false positives. I'll explain this what it means. And number three, by using an adaptive interstimulus interval. Again, I will explain this in the subsequent slides. Okay, let's look at this this one first by using adaptive interstimulus interval. Okay, now let's take a perimetric stimulus. This is how your time flows in your x-axis. Let's say you showed a stimulus for 200 milliseconds, and then you wait for 100 milliseconds for stimulus response, and then you show the next stimulus for another 200 milliseconds, and then you wait for 1000 milliseconds, and you wait for another 1000 milliseconds, and then you show another stimulus. That you keep on going, right? Now let's say for first few stimulus presentations, you notice where is the patient is giving the response. So like for example, I show a stimulus for 200 milliseconds and I wait for 100,000 milliseconds and see when is the patient is, and then I show the next stimulus presentation. Now let's say the patient is responding at 800 milliseconds. This particular patient is responding at 800 milliseconds. So I responded one at 800 milliseconds, 800 milliseconds, 800 milliseconds. Then I know this patient is responding at 800 milliseconds. So what I do is, instead of me waiting for 1000 milliseconds for the next stimulus presentation, let me shorten this window by 800 milliseconds. So it sees what is this your stimulus, at what point you are responding to the stimulus. So based upon your stimulus reaction times, the interstimulus duration is narrowed. For example, if you see someone, let's say they are responding only at 600 milliseconds, 600 milliseconds, 600 milliseconds, then this was kept at 700 or 600 milliseconds or something like that. So the interstimulus duration will be altered based upon your responses. So that's how it reduces the test duration. And the other thing it does is, we all know what is a false positive is. So false positives uses a catch trial. You know what is a false positive is. I am not going to explain to you, but briefly it is like you wait for a brief period of time and see whether the patient is responding or not. In other words, false positives are responses when there is no stimulus is presented. Okay, so what you have to do, you basically have to wait for some time, just mimic the sound and see where is this, whether you are responding or not. But usually your SITA doesn't does that. What it does is, immediately after you present the stimulus, for the next 50 milliseconds, your brain takes time for you to respond. So you cannot respond to the stimulus within 50 milliseconds. But let's say if you responded within this 50 milliseconds, then there is no way possible that you have already processed the stimulus and then responded to the stimulus. So it must have been a false positive response. So the SITA thinks if you responded within 50 milliseconds of the stimulus presentations, then that must be a false positive response, because it is practically impossible for you to respond within 15 milliseconds of your stimulus presentation. So those presentations which are false within the 50 milliseconds of your, immediately after your stimulus presentations, are taken as the false positive responses in the SITA. So this is how your SITA becomes slightly faster when it compares to your full.